get this, there's a pay gap between the male and the female version.
Are you fucking serious?
Yeah, the male version costs 145. The top line male version costs $145,000, where the female top line female goes to $129,000. So there's a pay gap. So even in fabricated women life, men are worth more than women. Hi.
Hello and welcome to
Hello.
Woman's Waiting. Hi, Mara. How are you?
Hi. I am fine. How are you, Logan?
I am excellent. I'm so excited to talk to you. I feel a little bit intimidated to tackle what I have for the news today, but I know that you have worked hard on your kind of main artifact, and I'm really intrigued to hear what we're going to be talking about for our main event.
It is going to be exciting.
Mara, what does womansplaining mean to you these days? I always like kind of checking in. How are
Yeah.
you womansplaining?
Okay, so I'm women's planning AI specifically these days
Hmm.
as working through tremendous amount of frustration as a non-techie person
Hmm.
and trying and failing and getting so frustrated that I want to throw something out a window and just picking myself back up again and being like, okay, that was terrible. I'm going to try to again in 5 minutes after I've calmed down. And why I think that's important is because I think that for a lot of people, for a lot of us who don't see ourselves as techie, we start to engage these tools. Maybe those of us who are a little bit more mature, like myself, we start to engage these tools and you bump into a blocker and you just
Hmm.
want to quit.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of patience and self confidence to work through those periods. So I wanted to say that to people because I've had about 50,000 of those moments this week. And we just, in fact, Logan and I just had one of those this right before coming on this call. And so for women's planning AI, I think women's planning is like, we don't have it all figured out.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Right? We don't have it all figured out. We're learning. We are trying our best. We're trying to get better. We're trying to learn more. But there are going to be days where it just feels very, very challenging. And that I empathize with everyone who's feeling that way.
I like starting it off there, because uh, let's start there. I think the what I always like emphasizing is that there is no, I repeat this a lot, that there is no such thing as behind. A lot of
Yeah.
times people, I think I've heard it so frequently. I feel it
Yeah.
myself all the time, but the
All the
number
time.
one thing that people say to me, they're like, I just feel so behind, or like, I'm so behind on,
Yep.
you're so far ahead of me. I'm
Yep.
so behind. And it feels my metaphor for this, work with me on this. I don't know if it's going to land, but it feels like we all think that this is some sort of marathon race, like, and then
Hmm.
and then it's, oh, who's ahead of me and who's behind me. But to me, this very much, maybe this is in keeping with the World Cup, and we've been watching a lot of
Oh, yeah.
soccer or football in my
Right.
household, but
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
because my husband's
Oh,
from
we
the
have
UK,
to.
but like, so we can't say soccer. But um it feels like it's much more of a collaborative team sport right now, in the sense that I'm learning shit all the time from the people in my
Yeah.
circles. And I'm like, oh, cool. I didn't even think about that. And then
Right.
there is an individual component to this, which is, of course, like, I want to get better at using X, Y, and Z, and I need to understand my own strengths and weaknesses or whatever. But there is no behind. This is not oh, I'm fast. This is I'm passing the ball to somebody else. They're passing it back. I'm looking at the field. I'm trying to see where I'm supposed to be. I think that it's much, people always assume that it's a very individual, we all take that lens of like, what is my individual, how good am I as an individual? But I do think that we need to see this as a team sport right now.
I completely agree with you. And the other aspect of that, which I was involved in a conversation with a man yesterday who's been involved in tech forever, and he kept coming back to I would say something and he'd be like, "Well, in 1974 when I first downloaded Linux." And I was like, "Okay. right? And like those types of conversations to me are the opposite of women's planning because it just
Hmm.
makes it just reinforcing that I'm behind. It was just reinforcing like you
Yeah.
can't possibly understand because you weren't there in 1974. Right? And then you just kind of want to go home and be like, you're right. Like I'm just going to stream Netflix for the rest of the
Or
weekend
like, cool,
and give up.
let me go get in my time machine and try to go back. Like I hate I really also hate that when people are like, well, if you look at where, the dot-com boom, like I don't know, I think that there's a time. I'm a huge history nerd. I love bringing in the let's think about this from a macro perspective kind of thing, but I do think that there's a real insider outsider
Yes,
temptation by so many people to be like, well, I've been there, I've been doing
exactly.
this, and all of these people, and I get it. Like
I
if
get
I
it.
were like a 40 plus year veteran of
Veteran.
the tech
Yeah.
industry, and all of a sudden people are out here being like, well, do you want me to be your AI coach? I would be like, I get it, that's human nature to be like, no, no, no,
Right.
no, no. You plant your flag in the sand and you're like, no, I have been here, so I understand it. And to me, this is a moment that, like, it is so new for so many people that, like, it is not the time to be carving out territories of ego and expertise. There is so nobody knows what they're doing,
And
genuinely.
those are just also not my people, right? My people
Yeah,
are the
yeah,
ones who are like up for the soccer game, right? Who are
yeah,
like,
yeah,
this is
exactly. Yeah, yeah,
before let's like you are my what are you? What are the positions in a soccer game? You're my goalie,
yeah.
Logan.
Great.
You're
Yeah.
my goalie.
Hmm.
I don't exactly know what you're protecting me against, but you're my goalie, right? And this guy is just not I'm just not joining his team. Like that's fine. He's doing an individual game. He's
He's
like
playing.
setting out his, street cred and all of
Yeah,
that. And
yeah, yeah,
okay. But then I turn around to my people and say, "Oh my God, Logan, I'm trying to learn this thing. Can you help me?"
yeah, yeah,
And try to not feel bad about myself that I haven't figured it out yet.
yeah, yeah.
So that's
All
where I
right.
am. That's women's planning to me this week.
All right, so we are woman-splaining soccer. This is the woman-splaining World Cup right now. We're in theme,
We are
basically. Yeah.
obsessed. We are obsessed here.
All right. So for anyone listening for the first time, Mara, do you want to give a quick introduction of who you are and what your background is and why we are
I would,
woman-splaining together?
I would love to, Logan. So I am Mara Bolis, and I am founder of an inclusive AI adoption lab called First Prompt, and I am a fellow at the Berkman Klein Center for Internet and Society, and I'm co-host of Women's Planning AI, which is the best period podcast period on period Earth period. And how about you, Logan?
My name is Logan Curry. I have been in the startup world, lots of ed tech. I was recently the co-founder of a career tech company for 3 years. We kind of ended that chapter earlier this year. I am a visiting fellow at Capita, where I am looking into how AI is impacting women's roles, and how that kind of extends to family economic security. And I am a huge nerd on all things kind of AI and personal, I want to say personal productivity, but I think it goes beyond that, because the main takeaway that I have from my experience as a co-founder working with a lot of job seekers and around the kind of professional expertise, is
Mhm.
around AI and personal knowledge management and kind of building your own personal OS, and how that can help you in your career, how that can help you really solidify your own expertise. And so I'm kind of looking at what that kind of AI native work looks like. Oh, I read a really good piece. I'll link it in the show notes, but it's a paper, and the phrase is sticky. It's just really stuck with me, and I might start workshopping it into how I describe myself, because that was not my most cogent self intro. But it was talking about the future of work and the future of workers, and
Mhm.
it was just a really interesting. It's about how AI is asymptomatic in how it affects your cognition. And we've talked about this on the show before, but it's basically a paper about how AI can lessen your expertise over time because you start relying on it too much. And so it was trying to center I just loved the phrase "the future of work and the future of workers," and I immediately was like, yes, that is what I am really interested in, is not just how work is changing, but how it is changing for the individual and for people. Anyway, that I'll link it in the show notes because it was a really, I haven't
I
like, yeah, but future of work and future of workers is a phenomenal phrase that I think we should all start using more.
I think it's fantastic. And I should have added that, and my kind of area of work is women's empowerment. So that is Logan's lane, and then, but also, well, I'm not going to speak for Logan. But and for me, I've been looking at the gender dynamics, particularly for women from an economic standpoint. So my
Mhm.
fascination is how all of these changes are going to change gender power relations in the future.
Yes, yes. So we
Yes.
come to every conversation with quite a lot of opinions loosely held, and try
Correct.
to bring in our respective experiences. But in every episode, this is a kind of solo Logan and Mara episode. We
Yes,
do
it is.
have quite an exciting lineup of guests coming up. So
Yes, we do.
we will be alternating some interview episodes and then some kind of two-woman show episodes. But in every one of these, we it's like an intellectual potluck. A conversational jam session where we each bring something that we want the other to know about that we don't know what it is in advance. Sometimes it's an appetizer, the other one brings the main dish. So today I am bringing a little news morsel, a little amuse-bouche, if you will, involving Palantir. Such a little light, a light,
Whoa.
fluffy, just a I don't know how much further I should take the
Whoa.
analogy, but all right. So this is specifically a tweet or an X post
Uh-huh.
that went pretty viral. It has, at current count, I will look at it, 2 million views,
Whoa.
and quite a lot of comments, retweets, whatever, however we want to call it. So specifically, it is an X post by somebody named Arnaud Bertrand, or if we're going to be very French about it, it would be Arnaud Bertrand. Um,
Bertrand.
Bertrand. And it is talking about a manifesto that the CEO and founder of Palantir, Alex Karp, made about sovereignty. And so
Okay.
they basically came out with something on July 1st, and it was all about the importance of AI sovereignty, which has been a very, very, I think, we've touched on it in this show before, but it's been an increasingly popular topic of conversation because so much of AI has to do with who owns what and who has
Mm.
access to what, and the entire fraught ecosystem of ownership, of independence, of indeed like sovereignty. So I'll read a few highlights from this tweet, and then we can kind of go back big picture. So he says that this narrative by Palantir around sovereignty is much more consequential than people may assume. So he's calling it essentially the canary in the coal mine of announcing the death of two major assumptions that are propping up the US economy right now. So
Whoa. Okay.
one assumption is that AI labs will be able to extract significant economic rent. So it's this idea that closed labs or closed models or these frontier labs that have been able to charge a great deal of money for kind of more expensive compute. We've talked a bit about the rising cost of tokens, et cetera, that these labs like OpenAI and Anthropic are going to have this economic return on this massive investment. That
Mm-hmm.
is one assumption that is propping up the economy that is going to be proven incorrect.
Mm-hmm.
The second assumption is that other countries can accept structural dependency on US technology and services without pushing back on sovereignty concerns.
Mm-hmm.
So I think this is like the intersection in many ways of, again, topics that we've touched on the show around the role of government. And there's a lot we could talk
Mm-hmm.
about with their, obviously Fable being pulled, et cetera, and then back on the market. But where government and technology are intersecting and how this plays out on a geopolitical scale. So
Mm-hmm.
for context, and then I'll pause and kind of say my favorite line from this tweet, but for context, a bunch of major middle powers, even US allies, are pulling away from Palantir. So France announced that its domestic intelligence agency, which had relied on Palantir for the last 11 years, would replace it with a French version,
Mm.
essentially, because they can't accept strategic dependencies. Germany did something similar. Spain is doing something similar. So essentially, and even the UK has Palantir under review. And so this manifesto about sovereignty is a very savvy move from Palantir. And we don't like Palantir, right? Like this isn't like, oh wow, Palantir speaks the truth. But it is, two things can be true at the same time, which is the theme of this show, ambivalence. It can be Palantir is part of the problem here, and it's talking about something that we all need to be talking about more, which is what is the future of kind of nationalism and national technology across the board. Okay, so the one thing, and I'll bring it back to the US here. This line like really absolutely needs to be analyzed forever. Okay, so when you pair this, and it's talking about SpaceX, it's anyway, I'll link the tweet, but when you pair this with the fact that it increasingly looks like the US made a wrong bet with closed source AI, an extremely expensive wrong bet, the picture that emerges is of a country that bet its economic future on two things: proprietary AI and captive allies, and is losing them both at the same time.
Wait. Okay. Say it again. This
Uh-huh.
is like, okay, say it again.
It increasingly looks like the US made a wrong bet with closed source AI, an extremely expensive wrong bet. The picture that emerges is of a country that bet its economic future on two things: proprietary AI and captive allies, and is losing both at the same time.
I don't understand the question about captive allies because that assumes that that countries have a lot of other alternatives,
That's fair. Yeah.
right? Like I don't like where this is the whole thing. Like I think what we've bet our economy on is that inequality, massive wealth inequality is sustainable.
Hmm.
That's actually the assumption that I think is like follows from this, right? Is that when you're talking about building your economy on and ensuring kind of the capture of not only US economies but other economies being tied to this oligopolistic
Mm-hmm.
model
Mm-hmm.
in the US, you're assuming that all of the wealth concentration that's derived from that can
Mm-hmm.
continue infinitely,
Right.
because
Right.
I don't know that there's what is that, like it's an inelastic situation right now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
How, I mean, so what are the alternatives? Like, Logan, I mean, I know you're working in like with open models, like an
Mm-hmm.
open source. So what would you say, like how would you argue for that this is true? How do you argue that this is true?
The captive allies
Yeah, well, that the
argument in
captive
particular.
allies have options.
Well, there are a lot more options now, right? So this is where it comes to the geopolitics of all of this, and we can probably do a whole deep dive episode on the China kind of bet on AI, the Chinese bet on AI versus the US bet on AI, but primarily led by, and there's Mistral, which is a European model. There are
Mhm.
models within open
Yeah.
source models within and
Yeah.
companies in Europe as well, but China, for example, we've got DeepSeek, we've got Kira, I think the new GLM 2.5. Like there's a lot of open source options coming out of China that are in some ways as maybe not quite as robust as a Fable or as a GPT 5.6, but they're getting much better. Will they ever catch up to the frontier models? Maybe, maybe not. There was a really good hard fork episode recently about this, about kind of the overall government involvement in and the increased government involvement in the release of models, right? But
Yeah.
to me, it's about, so all of these companies or countries that have been quoted here, so like France, Germany, the UK, they're making their own, they're making a homegrown version of Palantir in this scenario. So it's about sovereignty I think what interests me is that sovereignty is one word that's doing kind of three jobs. So it's about nations, it's about corporations, it's about individuals. And, you know, what we're seeing now, and I think pulling Fable really showed a lot of companies that they cannot rely on one frontier model or just using Anthropic, that it's forcing people to look at companies and then now countries potentially, that they cannot be reliant on one solution. So you're having to
Yeah,
diversify the base.
I don't know. I don't think they have a short-term vision. I think they have a medium-term vision.
Mm,
Right. And they're going to be, yes, they're going to build their own models, but the way that the models are proceeding in the US is just so exponentially fast.
right, right.
If you're starting now to build your alternative solutions, like there's just no way you're going to be able to catch up. And
But
and
that's on,
and I was
yeah.
also making the xenophobic guess that a lot of these companies aren't going to rely on Chinese models because they're too afraid of interference from the Chinese government.
Mm,
So that's kind of where I went, is that I maybe in certain discrete scenarios that might be true, but I think ultimately there's going to be this continued dramatic reliance on this oligopolistic set of companies from the
hmm
US
hmm
that is almost inextricable at this point, and that probably for the most part people are going to see, I don't know, this period in the US economy as potentially remediable, right? That we're not always, that the operating environment isn't always this chaotic,
mm.
because maybe from an economic and a business standpoint, people realize that just throwing your weight behind whoever is likely to win and have the lowest, commitment to regulations, maybe that's
Mhm.
not the only deal in town.
Yeah,
And
I
I
see
think
that.
I'm missing your point around sovereignty. I think I'm not getting to your point around sovereignty. I guess what I'm saying, but I guess I am, and saying, like, I think maybe American exceptionalism lives on in this
Mm.
narrow area of work just because of the progress that the AI labs in the US have been able to make.
I think that and so I don't, to me, and there maybe is an argument for seeing what the results of the midterms are or whatever, but to me,
Exactly.
there's not, it's moving so quickly that there's no way, it just does seem like this is a, a fork in the road. And when we look back in in a few years, regardless of maybe who's in the White House, like this is the reason I thought this tweet was particularly interesting. It is kind of fatalistic in some ways. I'm just being like, this is the beginning of the end. But I think that it is a house of cards in some ways, that current front runner status is based on. And I see your point around the how far ahead the kind of frontier labs are. And I wonder at what point there becomes diminishing returns for that type of compute and cognition. It's already so good. What more, like, and as the more open source models catch up, there's no there, it's a narrowing gap of how much you need a Fable versus insert XYZ other model. Does that make sense too? Because I feel like it's like, what do you need it for? Even me with Fable, I'm like, I've had that extra 5 days of Fable access, and I'm like, I'm kind of, and this is one person obviously, but I'm like, I don't need it anymore, right? Like it'd be nice to continue to have it, and I'm fine with Opus. I'm fine with GP. Like I think for the vast majority of, and maybe that's just wishful thinking, but like I don't know how much it needs to be at the bleeding edge of compute and of cognition.
Yeah, I mean, I see what you're saying. I also think Fable gives me a little bit of a glimpse into a world where people will no longer be necessary.
Mm. Ooh, yeah. This
And
has come up a few
I'm
times.
not
This
the
has come
person
up
that
a
can
few times. Yeah.
necessarily
Yeah.
I'm not the person that can necessarily conjure that world. Like I
hmm
had that same feeling where I was like, "Oh, I did this with Fable and it was like slightly better than with other models."
Mm.
But at the same time, there are other things that I've done with Fable where it's like, "Oh, I had a thought and I put a half well-written sentence in and Fable created a website that I can now
Yep.
publish."
Yep. Yep.
So if the story is only, 25% written
hmm
in terms of what these tools can actually do, I think we go back to the inequality
Oh, for sure, for sure. Yeah,
argument.
yeah.
And I don't think that our, I think our allies stay captive because capitalism,
Mm.
and because these are going to be the most efficient models with which to get rid of human workers. And the bet that we're
Yeah,
making
yeah.
is that our economies can sustain people not having clear paths to individual productivity.
Hmm. Yeah. Oh man, I have another. There was another. I was so torn because I had another article that I really wanted to talk about, and it was much more straight up about cognitive inequality, which is one of the favorite phrases that
Yeah,
we've passed back and
yeah,
forth from the book
yeah.
Super Shifts. But the it is a piece by shit, I'm gonna forget his name, David Brooks in the
Oh, love
Atlantic,
David Brooks.
and it is everyone should go read it, but he divides everyone into three categories basically. And it's I liked it as I was reading it, and then the more that I've thought about it, I hate it. I hate it so
Ah,
much because
interesting.
it's all about the this catch 22 of AI enhancing cognition while also undermining it, kind of what we were talking about in
Yeah.
the asymptomatic, decline of
Yeah.
expertise or whatever. But he divides people into three kind of cognitive classes:
Huh.
people who are just lazy intellectually and just use the cheapest tools, whatever, do junk food work, etc. People who want to do more but who can't really help themselves, but then to use shortcuts. And then people who have a high need for cognition, who are like the people who run marathons. And the people who run, and his view is that the people who run marathons are the ones doing the most with AI, who are like keeping control of
Mm.
their faculties and their skills, et cetera, et cetera. And they are the ones who will capture the biggest value from the next few years. And but I read it and it just felt very much like a version of society that it was like the feudalism or like the Middle Ages. You're just kind of like, oh,
Yeah.
picture that like triangle from middle school
Yeah.
history class where you're like, oh yeah, no, just all of the serfs. And then it's like the little then it's like the tiny little
Right.
like the little middle class, or like,
Right.
the nobility, and then it's the royals at the top or whatever. And you're like, this isn't what so just it's just is the way that it is, as if systems aren't in place. So like to your point around companies trying to capture the value of being able to get rid of workers, maybe, but Europe has systems in place to not
Yeah.
let that happen. Does that make sense? And so it's like, at
Yeah.
what point, and this is where the American exceptionalism comes down to,
Yeah.
the absolute obsession with American individualism, right? Where it's like, oh, it's
Right.
just all in each
Right.
person. What could a
Right.
system do? What could,
Right.
safeguards be put in place to have a social safety net, to have,
Right.
when it enraged me in retrospect, because I was like, oh cool, yeah, it's just all on the individual, no worries about that. There's nothing that it's like, oh, there's such an obesity crisis, everyone is just lazy. And you're like, oh no, it has nothing to do with food deserts and like economic and food security. You know what I mean? Like it's this absolutely like not seeing the forest for the trees. You're just it's Anyway, that's we could go on and on. I will pause there. This has been more than an appetizer because I'm like, we've gone in a thousand directions. But I do want other people's opinions on this article because it's in the Atlantic. I'll find a good link and send it in the show notes. But
It was
I want
very
your opinions.
interesting.
Yeah. Okay.
So should we shift?
We should.
Okay, so shifting, but it's related to the question of, are people necessary?
Ooh.
So, Logan, question for you. AI romantic companions. Thumbs up or thumbs down? Okay, so I'm gonna lay out a few things, and we're
Okay.
gonna take some twists and turns here, okay? So my assumption on AI companions has been thumbs down for individuals and for society.
Okay.
And because it's a cause and consequence of human disconnection.
Yep.
And instead of identifying roots to human relationships, it supplants the need to try, is my
Yes, I agree
sense,
with that.
right?
Just
And
on.
then we've talked a lot about, sorry, go ahead. So the landscape that we're landing in with these commercial solutions, right,
Yep.
of AI romantic companions, is one where marriage rates are falling in the US, but
Hmm.
elsewhere also. people are having less sex. So I'm talking about cisgender straight couples. I don't know
Sure.
about not outside of that space, so I don't want to deny that space, but I just don't know the research outside of that space. But within
Hmm.
that space, marriage rates are falling, people are having less sex, men and women are drifting apart politically,
Hmm.
and then you've got these movements that are on the fringes, arguably, the manosphere on one side.
Hmm.
And then the manosphere is like an online environment of men who have sort of checked out of or just given up on romantic relationships and largely blame women for their being too superficial to see men's worth. And so they're just going to like, men are going to peace out and blame women for the fact that they don't have any sex, etc. And then there are, movements like I think it's called 4B in Korea, the four
Yes.
no's, women saying no
Yes.
to dating, no to sex, no to marriage, no to children, right? So
Yes.
either side on the fringes is like out, but that's influencing the mainstream increasingly, right? So now into this landscape, we're going to introduce a partner that is custom built for you.
Hmm.
Can't be disappointed. And we've talked on the show about Annie Grok, who I read online was described as a gothic Lolita, which is a reference to Vladimir Nabokov's book about a predatory relationship between a middle-aged man and a 12-year-old girl, for those who haven't read it. And so these products have exploded in popularity. And my initial assumption had been that had been mostly men. That's not true. It's now leveling. It's now women almost just as much as men.
Uh-huh.
And there's this article in the New York Times from February last year of a Chinese woman who'd gone on 200 dates over the past year with AI bots and was honing in on two to be exclusive with. And at some point in the article, she says, "My God, how am I supposed to date in real life in the future?"
Right. Right.
And 15% of young adults in the US are in steady relationships with an AI bot.
15.
15% in the US are in steady relationships or married to an AI bot. So take this next level. There's a company in China called UBTech that unveiled, I think this last week, a full-sized humanoid robot with silicone skin,
Uh-huh.
blinking eyes, manicured nails, attuned to read your every mood. They have male and female versions. Get this. There's a pay gap between the male and the female version.
Are you fucking serious?
Yeah, the male version costs 145. The top line male version costs $145,000, where the top line female goes to $129,000. So there's a pay gap. So even in fabricated women life, men are worth more than women. I mean, unbelievable. But then this is the tagline of the company. The tagline is, or this is what the CEO says, that this is the marketing ploy. It will never betray you, will always be loyal to you, and will love you unconditionally. So, here's the question. No,
Hmm.
one more thing. So then what happened is the Chinese government has now banned AI romantic bots.
Of course they have. They're facing a demographic cliff.
They're facing a
Dem-
demographic cliff.
demographic.
Demographic click. Right. So that's what they're talking about. They're talking about urban loneliness, gender equality, like all these things underneath it, right? So is a government ban if indeed AI romantic partners are removing us from each other, is a government ban on AI bots good or bad, right? We have research showing that people prefer AI therapists to human therapists,
Yes.
right? Do we need to be protected from what we want as
Do
humans?
do we need to be protected from what we want?
Is this prohibition, like alcohol prohibition, or cigarettes? Like, do people find a way around these
Yeah.
bans, and just bust through? Or does it become like cigarettes, where at some point it gets marginalized and kind of taxed into near oblivion? But so Logan, good or bad? Ban on AI romantic partners, good or bad? Government ban on AI romantic partners, good or bad?
Should governments ban sex robots?
Yeah.
That might be the title of the episode. I mean,
Well, but
okay,
I mean, to be fair, it's not just sex robots. Like, it is 100% also connection.
right. So I believe that China has also banned not just sex robot or humanoid robotic companions, but they've also banned anthropomorphized AI in general. So it's
Yeah,
my
yeah, yeah, yeah.
understanding that
Yeah.
basically it's not just the
I actually don't
humanoid.
even know about the humanoid robot ban.
Mhm.
I probably misspoke, but this is a ban in terms of the
In terms of
chat,
the companion. Yeah,
like the
yeah,
AI Annie
right.
Grok type
Right.
version.
So I find that very interesting that they've essentially banned all anthropomorphized and companion AI in general because and so I wonder if we maybe separate out the because in my mind it's hard to not picture the sex robot. So like I want because I don't know how quickly that is going to develop. I've seen a few things about sex robot brothels in Berlin, for example. So I know that
What?
yeah, I'll find the link and that exists. So there are robotic sex workers out there, which I kind of like
I kind of
as
like it too.
right because sex work is
Not ideal.
not ideal. I mean, yeah. So that is interesting to me beyond the kind of companion and relationship and human dynamics of it all.
Right.
I do. So if I'm wondering if we maybe separate out the physical companionship
For sure.
aspect with the
Right.
emotional and
Yes.
mental relationship aspect because my I'm so torn
I know. I know.
because it goes back to I mean this is related I think to the latter half of what we were talking about earlier this idea of the David Brooks article of oh some people are just so stupid that they're just going to get stupider. It's like this idiocracy argument, right? In terms of oh no, it's just if I'm a intellectually lazy individual, then that's just going to continue to go downhill. That will continue to decline because it's too good. And so I think that maybe goes to an argument for the cigarettes of it all. People don't have enough self-control.
Yeah.
They can't help themselves, or maybe the prohibition where it's like, okay, yeah, no, we need to protect people from their baser instincts, and we need to put a system in place to ban things. But I mean, ultimately, humans are if I you tell me I can't do something, that's what I want to do.
Right. They're going to abolitionize
Yeah, yeah.
this whole thing. They're gonna like, it's gonna be like, like grain alcohol distilleries in
Right,
people's
right,
wash
right. There's
tubs,
going to be
right?
a bootleg
There's gonna be a
moonshine.
bootleg version of this.
We're
But
going to get some speakeasies.
what I find really, what?
What does the sex robot speakeasy look like? Because I kind of want to go there.
Sex robot speakeasy. I think we just got a new episode
I think
title.
that's been
I mean, this episode is like, I think, going to keep on giving that way. But so here's what really challenged my thinking on this. So there's a woman who's brilliant, and she's in my Berkman Klein fellowship. Her name is In Young Chung.
Mhm.
She's absolutely genius, and she recently wrote a paper called "Would You Marry Your AI?"
Mm.
And we'll put it in the show notes. Really good. So here's how she comes at it. This is so interesting. It's going to blow your mind. She comes at this question as an advocate for gay rights. I mean, she's
Okay.
not like an ally. She's an ally.
Mhm.
She's a
Mhm.
professor, but she's an
Mhm.
ally. And she says, if you look at as an ally to gay
Mhm.
rights, you look at this and say, who has the right to say who you fall in love with?
Mhm.
Why
Mhm.
should the government tell two men or two women that they
Yep.
can't be in love, they can't get married?
Yep.
Right? So like there's a moralistic view. Like, and I led you down this road, so it's not exactly fair. I baited you because I would have said the same thing, Logan. But like I would have said the same thing before her paper of there's like a version of, saving ourselves from our base instincts that
Right.
like goes back to some sort of like, preacher in the 19
Totally.
like
There's
X
a
something
yep.
quoting
Yep.
biblical like a man and a man should not lay down together, blah blah thing, right? where once I just thought that was so interesting to bring in the terms of, where does my liberalism
Mm-hmm.
meet its match? In terms of being like, oh yeah, to absolutely to get married, absolutely trans people should marry, and adopt and everything, but no, marry a bot, like let me clutch my pearls.
Yeah. Yeah. I've seen a very funny reel on either TikTok or Instagram a few months ago of a flash forward to 2080 where somebody in millennial or Gen X meets their granddaughter's AI companion. And it's like this comparison of somebody in like the 1960s meeting
Yeah.
their like, white daughter's black boyfriend, or, or in the 90s of somebody meeting their granddaughter's girlfriend,
This is
and it's
absolutely, this is happening right now. There's happening right
right.
now. There are articles about people who are so upset that their families don't recognize their
Mm-hmm.
AI husbands or wives, and that they're rejecting their AI husbands and wives and how hurt they are.
Because what is real here? What is our definition of what a real relationship is? What is the
Well, so she in Young Chung. So here's what she argues. Here's where she goes down to, or where she gets to. She gets to a meditation on love,
okay?
and she defines love as philosopher Alain Baudieu, who, if I knew who
Beautiful.
that was, I would probably say his name really in a really lovely way. That insists love is a construction built from difference, a tenacious adventure whose meaning depends on the risk of failure.
Yeah.
And then the next, I love this. And then the next, my God, it gives me chills. And then the next sentence says, a relationship architected to minimize friction, absorb complaint, and require no adjustment on the user's part does not offer a higher form of connection. It forecloses the conditions under which connection makes people capable of more than what they were before.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Damn! Mic drop. That made me think so much about my marriage, about my family, right? That like love means changing yourself so that you can be better for other people.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. I was just thinking through like how would I frame this in a way that what are the stakes? And I think back to the episode we had with Jessica Silby around how AI destroys institutions. And it was
Yeah.
much more on the macro level of education, of polity, of democracy, et cetera. But it all came down to friction. And what is the
Yeah.
interpersonal friction relationship? How are you building things? And I think there was a phenomenal line from her paper around AI doesn't experience risk. And so
Right.
I think that that is what stuck out to me from that quote from the philosopher about love is there's no risk of failure because you are not going to disappoint your AI boyfriend. How could you disappoint them? Because there's no stakes and there's no sense of motivation and incentive and I just wonder about yeah, the you're I wouldn't want I'm thinking about it in terms of my kids and I would not
Hmm.
want my kids to only have a romantic relationship with a robot
Right.
because there is a static element to that. That means that their growth as people would be kind of frozen in time, in my view, at least. And I don't mean that in a judgmental way because I'm sure that there are, I mean, I have experienced, because now I'm second guessing myself, because I have experienced moments of personal growth using Claude. The
100%.
the prompts that I've used with Fable in the last week, I'm like, show me what I missed. Like, what am
100%.
I doing wrong? And Claude pulls no punches. And I was like, we have a friend who kind of didn't stop using Claude for 4 days because she was so like, what the fuck? Like, shout out to one Kiku there, but like, and she was like, no, I'm
Yeah, she
so
literally said,
hurt.
like, I think we need some time apart.
So so we're all skirting the bounds of this already. So I'm trying to work through what this means, but I don't but when I think about the I think I would put it in a hierarchy. I think it's this, like, maybe we all just need to be polyamorous is the moral of the story, because I think because I think about it in terms
Another
of,
good episode title.
yeah, I think because it's, hey, how seriously do I take the feedback that Claude gives me versus how seriously do I take the feedback that my husband gives me?
Right.
That is a huge, and if for people who are listening, I'm
Right.
putting my hands very far apart right here, because
And
I
for my
know that
husband, and
Claude,
here's this episode.
any time that Claude gives me feedback, like, I'm like, okay, cool, like I see that, and it only has such a narrow glimpse of my context. It has a very big corpus of information on my professional endeavors and my workflows when it comes to the things that I do for the podcast, for my job, for other projects, but it has a tiny ass window
Yeah.
into who I am the rest of the 24 hours in the day when
Yeah.
I'm not in front of my laptop and when it doesn't have access to my email. You know what I mean? There's such a, when you think about the context window, and maybe this is where, when we think about the sci-fi becoming much less science fiction and much more science reality of, once everyone's wearing meta glasses and has the wearable, once AI comes into the wearables, and once we see this idea of
Yeah.
ambient AI, which is a phrase I heard from, I think, Sal Khan at a talk, and when it's in the ether, does that make sense? Like, where it's not just
Yeah.
here, this is me and my laptop, or me and Claude talking on my phone. That's when I can maybe see the development of AI relationships that could encompass more of that context. But I wonder how much the sycophancy will still be there, right? And even if you can train out the sycophancy, it's still, there's no stakes. It is still a robot that isn't afraid of death. It's still something that has no, doesn't know what it feels like to give a hug. I don't know, like, there's maybe.
It's such a complicated one, and it's still, FYI, something that is offered by a company. Anytime, like, what if the company goes under? What if you don't have enough money to pay for your significant other
Yeah,
anymore? Like,
yeah, yeah.
what kind of data is being extracted about you and
Right,
sold
right, right.
elsewhere? Like, what kind of data breach could involve some sort of a, you know, God knows what kind of personal, really deeply personal information
Right.
could be exposed about the conversations that you've had with your most intimate, in
Yeah,
some
yeah.
situations, partners. So, like, I don't know. So then I come back to the Chinese government ruling.
Mm.
Like, it's so paternalistic and it's so heavy-handed and it's totally not going to work. And I think it's a good idea, but I don't know. I think it's a good idea, but
It
but I
comes
don't
back.
know. Like,
Yeah,
one
yeah.
of the arguments that In Yon Chung makes in her paper is 25% of Americans are estranged from their closest family member. So what do you do in a case of if you have no one to care for your medical needs and you've established a long-term
Right,
relationship with a bot?
right, right.
Do you
It,
have, like, are you awarded the state, or do you have, like, a bot that's been trained on your needs who would say, like, actually, in this situation, I happen to know that Mara would prefer to not be intubated and she would prefer, like, blah blah blah, or an anonymous, whatever, like, government worker who doesn't know shit about me.
yeah, man, this is gonna really, if you think about the loneliness epidemic,
Exactly.
like, this is just gonna blow everything up, right? Like, that's where it becomes.
Inextricable. I mean, it's like there's no route back.
Right. Yeah, I don't love using the phrase Pandora's box with anything with AI,
Mm.
because it takes agency away from us, right? But and it's seeing everything as an inevitability, but at the same time, it's so tempting. It comes back to, like, what do we crave as people? We crave connectivity, and we just want somebody to listen to us. And I think that that's where we all, I mean, I don't know about you, but sometimes I'm thinking about something and I just go to Claude. And
Of course.
you know, and it is a facet of conversation of thinking things through right now. And so I don't there's no blame, honestly there's no judgment when it
Yeah.
comes to why people would want that, right? It's
Yeah.
yeah,
I
it's
mean,
much
I
easier.
suspect that there could be, just to end on a less depressing place because we try to do that, but also because I think it's true. I see increasingly my like in like the 20 to 30-year olds that there's more of a like well, this is the whole backlash against social media, right? And that there's
Mm,
increasingly kind of a resistance to a recognition that we're being controlled by our phones and that there's an increasing resistance to this. So it
hmm
could be that this gets to such a extreme point that not for everybody, but for some hopefully large percentage of people, they're gonna be like, whoa,
Yep.
we came
Yep.
very close to the edge. And let's try to pull back and resurrect the things that are good in human contact.
Right, right, right. If you look at, I saw some really good article about kind of periods in art through history, where it's you
Mm.
have the impressionists and then you have then you have Picasso and the I'm not going to summarize this very well. My any hard art historian is going to be like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, or even in literature where you have the Enlightenment and the age of rationalism or whatever age, and then you have the Romantics period. Like there's always a pull and push. So it's okay, so everything is going artificial. You see this with the I feel like I read an article every week on, oh, it's IRL is back, like
Right, 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 right,
the importance
right,
of in-person connection, all that kind of
right,
stuff.
right,
So I
right.
think there's always going to be a push and a pull, but I do wonder when we look back in 10 years how quickly, because I mean, the thing I would say is that even this reaction, it's going to feel like a time capsule. This, what
Yeah,
we're talking about right
yeah.
now is
Precious. It's
going
going to
to
seem
feel
precious.
it's going to feel like, oh no, that's just a foregone conclusion. Because even if you think about how quickly things are moving and how quickly our norms are shifting,
Yeah.
it was weird 18 months ago when a bot joined a meeting. And
Yeah.
now it's an assumption, right?
Yeah.
And so then it becomes, I do think that this is going to change so quickly that it's just like, oh, cool. Are you, so me, Mara, um, Sally and Sally's boyfriend Mark will be joining us, and Sally's boyfriend Mark is on the phone listening in at the dinner table
Yeah.
and
Yep.
opining and is just there. Like I don't know if you've tried the new ChatGPT voice mode.
Mm-mm.
I was playing around with it a little bit, and it is much better. It doesn't interrupt. You know that weird kind of
Mhm,
lull,
mhm.
the pause. Like it is much more conversational you than we have experienced so far. So the advances in the tech, I think, especially when it comes to the multimodal aspect of this, are really going to enable this to become much more widespread.
Mhm.
So maybe we shouldn't be clutching our pearls about it. I don't know.
Exactly. I know, I know, I know. I don't know. I mean, this is it. It's yes.
Okay. Well,
Okay.
in 10 years, I look forward to meeting your second husband and shaking, and shaking his metallic hand.
Well, that was interesting, and there's some research that said the majority of married people who have these companions are very cagey about sharing the details with their spouses.
Oh, that makes so much sense. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Wow. The new type of emotional affair is with
Yeah.
AI.
Exactly.
Man. Okay. Well, thank you
Okay.
for that.
Yep.
We really dined out on that one.
We did indeed. We did indeed.
All right. That's it for us this week. If something in this episode made you want to argue with us or jump in with an opinion, good. That is the show working. We have a voicemail available on our website, or you can email us and jump into the conversation.
And guess what? We have a newsletter now. So for every episode, we're going to have the arguments that we've made, the resources that we've mentioned. So sign up on womensplainingai.com. Check a box, takes 10 seconds, and you'll be with us in other points during the week.
Amazing. And follow the show wherever you listen so next week's episode can find you. I'm Logan.
I'm Mara.
And this has been Womansplaining AI. We will change our minds out loud next week.